It's normal to look back at the past and ahead to the future. Just don't stare at them fixedly. Lieberman-Wang. We often glance back at the past, like someone standing on the riverbank, trying to recognize the currents that have already flowed away, searching for meaning in the shattered fragments. At the same time, we direct our gaze toward the future like a traveler admiring the distant horizon, where hope, anxiety, and dreams intertwine and blend. That is completely natural, because without the past, we lose our roots. Without the future, we lose our direction. But the problem does not lie in looking. It lies in staring fixedly. When our minds are glued tightly to the past, memories cease to be treasures and instead become a dark prison. Old mistakes replay like an endless film, gnawing at our self-worth and distorting our perception of the present. Conversely, when we immerse ourselves in the future, it no longer serves as motivation, but turns into a frenzy of delusion, where fears are magnified into monsters and expectations weigh so heavily they paralyze every action. Both extremes rob us of the most precious thing we possess, the present moment. The present is not noisy or dramatic like the past or the future. It is quiet, like a gentle breath, like morning sunlight slipping through a crack in the door. Yet, it is precisely in that simplicity that it holds the greatest power, the power of change. Only when we are no longer pulled and tugged by what has passed or what is yet to come can we act with clarity, feel things fully, and live in true freedom. Allow yourself to glance back now and then to learn, and to look forward to set your direction. But don't linger too long anywhere. Life is not behind us or ahead of us. It is happening right beneath our feet. And when we walk with full presence, each step is not merely movement, but a profound awakening. Remember that today is the tomorrow you worried about yesterday. Dale Carnegie. Yesterday, you may have pictured tomorrow as a murky land where every mistake lurked, fears were amplified, and terrible things seemed to lie in wait. Yet today has arrived, quietly, and far more ordinary than any scenario you once imagined. Reality is rarely as dramatic as anxiety. It is simpler, more bearable, and most importantly, it can always be met with calm composure. This is vivid proof of humanity's tendency to exaggerate the future. We often waste energy on things that have never happened, as if worrying could control destiny. But the truth is, when tomorrow becomes today, we are no longer the helpless dreamer. We become the true actor. Fear always looks enormous from afar, but when it draws near, it shrinks to exactly the size we are capable of facing. Anxiety is not entirely useless, but it must be placed in the right spot, as a warning signal, not the one steering the ship. When you realize you have already survived countless terrifying tomorrows in the past, you begin to build a quiet confidence in yourself that no matter what comes, you can handle it step by step with resilience. Today is not a day for fear, but living proof that you are stronger than you once imagined. And perhaps, instead of worrying about the next tomorrow, live fully in today, where every worry eventually gives way to action and deep peace. Life is too short to hold on to hatred for long. Elon Musk. Life, when seen from a sufficient distance, is not as long as we think it passes in the blink of an eye. Yet, it is long enough for negative emotions, if clung to silently gnaw away at the soul. Hatred, by its very nature, is not a rope that binds others, but a heavy anchor that drags us and keeps us trapped in the past, where old wounds keep being relived through endless, wandering thoughts. When you hold on to a grudge, you are repeating a wound in your mind, like pressing hard on a bruise that hasn't yet healed. You think you are upholding justice, but in truth, you are trading the peace of the present to keep an emotion that has lost its value. Life does not stop and wait for you to calm down. It keeps flowing, opening new opportunities and small joys, but all of them are obscured when your mind is filled with the shadows of the past. Letting go is not denying the hurt you once endured, but refusing to let that hurt define the rest of your life. It is like gently setting down heavy luggage after a long journey, not because it was never important, but because you know you cannot travel much farther if you keep carrying it forever. Life is so short that it makes us more selective about what we keep in our hearts. And then you understand that some things are worth remembering, but not worth carrying for a lifetime. When your heart feels lighter, it is not because the world has become better, but because you have stopped allowing the bad things to occupy space in your soul. And that is exactly when you truly begin to live fully. Throughout life, there will be people who make you angry, show disrespect, and treat you badly. Let God handle what they do, because the hatred in your heart will also destroy you. Will Smith. Throughout life, there will be people who enter your journey like a biting cold wind, bringing disrespect, words sharp as knives, and behaviors that make you feel diminished. The mind's natural reaction is to grow angry, to clutch rage like armor protecting self-esteem. But ironically, that anger is like holding a burning hot coal, intending to throw it at someone else, yet before it reaches them, your own hand has already been scorched. When you let God handle it, it is not merely religious advice, but a profound state of psychological release. You refuse to let another person's behavior manipulate your inner world. You do not deny the hurt, but you also refuse to let it take root as lingering hatred. Hatred carries an immeasurably dangerous trait. It gnaws silently from within. It distorts how you see the people around you, makes you carry excessive defenses, and gradually turns you into a version of yourself you would never want to become. On the other hand, when you choose to let go not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace, you are reclaiming control of your own life. There is a wondrous, quiet strength in refusing to answer with the same negative energy. It is like standing firm in the middle of a storm, not because the storm lacks power, but because you refuse to be swept away by it. And over time, you realize, not everyone who hurts you needs to be punished by you. Sometimes life, or, if you believe, a higher order, will balance everything in a way that requires no action from you. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to others, but a liberation you give to yourself. When your heart is no longer imprisoned by hatred, you do not merely feel lighter, you become truly free. Life is a dream to the wise, a game to the fool, a comedy to the rich, a tragedy to the poor. Sholom Aleichem. Reality carries no fixed meaning on its own. It is the way we perceive it that decides what it becomes. To the wise, life is like a dream. They recognize the impermanence of all things, understand that everything passes, so they neither cling too tightly nor panic at change. They live with a light, gentle awareness, like someone who knows they are dreaming and refuses to be swept into fleeting details. To the fool, life becomes a game full of impulse and devoid of awareness. They plunge into immediate desires, reacting to emotions without foreseeing consequences, like a player who never learned the rules. Their lack of understanding makes them think they are enjoying themselves, yet in truth, they are being led by blind impulses. For the rich, life sometimes becomes a comedy, not because they are always happy, but because they have enough distance to view everything with subtle irony. Once material needs are secured, the remaining problems feel lighter and can even be seen as amusingly ironic situations. But for the poor, life takes the shape of a tragedy where every choice is limited, every mistake carries a heavy price, and the pressure of survival makes it hard to view life through a gentler lens. Life is not something imposed on you, but something you constantly interpret and recreate. One can change their way of seeing, and thereby change the very experience of living. When you truly understand this, you are no longer a victim of circumstances, but the silent director of your life's meaning, no matter where you stand. Happiness is the feeling that power is increasing, that resistance is being overcome. Friedrich Nietzsche. Happiness is not a state of idle rest, but the feeling of constant forward movement. It does not lie in moments when everything flows easily, but in the instant you realize you are stronger than the person you were yesterday. When you face resistance, fear, procrastination, limits that seem insurmountable, and little by little break through them, that is exactly when happiness is born. Not loudly or showily, but quietly humming like an electric current through your inner self. I'm doing it. People are not truly satisfied when everything is always easy. A life that is too comfortable numbs the sense of being alive, just as muscles that are never used grow weak over time. It is resistance itself that gives meaning the necessary counterweight, so you can feel real growth. And when you overcome it, even if only by a small step, you not only solve the problem, but also expand your own horizons. That is why hard-won victories always bring a far deeper feeling than easy successes. Happiness is not the final destination, but a continuous motion. Like climbing a mountain, the joy is not in standing still at the summit, but in every step that carries you higher, every pounding heartbeat, proving you are still alive and still moving forward. When you feel yourself becoming stronger, wiser, and more in control of yourself, that is when you touch a true form of happiness, one no one can take away, because it is built from deep within. Do not seek a life without resistance. Seek a version of yourself strong enough to overcome it, because every time you refuse to quit, every time you keep stepping forward, even when doubt remains, you are nurturing a lasting happiness, the happiness of never-ending growth. I have learned to seek happiness by limiting my desires rather than trying to satisfy them. John Stuart Mill. The chase after the outside world turns into the restructuring of oneself. Usually, people believe happiness lies in satisfying desires, having more, achieving more, possessing more. But desire is like a bottomless jar. The more you pour in, the greater the thirst it demands. Every satisfaction brings only a brief moment of comfort, then immediately a new emptiness, a new craving, trapping us forever in the loop of lacking, seeking, achieving, lacking again. When you learn to limit your desires, you are not abandoning joy, but redefining it in a profound way. You begin to realize that happiness is not the result of external accumulation, but the natural outcome of inner fullness. Instead of trying to control the world, a nearly impossible task, you turn back to adjusting your own mind, where every real experience takes place. That is a form of deep freedom. When you need less, you are bound less. This is the shift from dependence to true self-mastery. Someone dependent on desires is like a leaf caught in the wind. Every external stimulus can make them waver uneasily. In contrast, someone who knows moderation is like a calm lake, not because there are no waves, but because they do not let every small gust distort the entire surface. They do not deny desires, yet they refuse to let them take the helm. When you are no longer obsessed with having more, you begin to feel more deeply what already exists. A meal becomes more complete. A moment of peace becomes more precious. And life, which hasn't changed much, suddenly feels lighter and more meaningful. That is not deprivation, but deliberate simplification. Happiness does not lie in making the world fulfill all your wishes, but in no longer needing the world to do so. When desires are placed in the right place, you do not lose joy. You finally hold the power to decide it in your own hands. Beware of the dryness of a busy life. Socrates. Dryness creeps into a life that is always rushing. When people are swept into the cycle of work, responsibilities, and endless goals, they begin to live like a programmed machine, more efficient, faster, yet gradually losing the ability to feel deeply. Busyness, which at first seems like a tool to build life, unwittingly becomes a fine dust that covers the soul, turning every experience bland and tasteless. Dryness does not arrive with noise. It slips in through the days when you no longer look up at the sky, no longer listen to a conversation with your whole heart, no longer feel moved by the small things around you. You still live, still finish your tasks, still move forward, but inside, everything becomes frighteningly flat, like an endless desert without a single landmark. And the danger is that you may slowly grow accustomed to that state without realizing what precious thing you have lost. When the mind is constantly occupied by the next thing to do, it has no room left for true presence. Without presence, there is no emotional depth. And when emotions are worn thin, life loses its color, even if outwardly it still looks full. That is the painful paradox. You may achieve more, yet feel far less. Being careful with that dryness does not mean abandoning effort, but knowing when to pause and truly feel. Sometimes, a single moment of silence, a deep breath, a slow gaze, a purposeless instant is enough to water the humanity that is slowly drying up. Because in the end, life is not only about what you accomplish, but about what you truly feel while you are living. If you are not careful, you may build a very successful life and yet forget how to enjoy it. And that is the greatest loss of all. Only when we truly know and understand that we have limited time on earth, and there is no way to know when our time will end, only then do we begin to live each day fully, as if it were the only day we have. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross. We know we will die, yet we live as if time is endless. It is precisely the illusion of plenty of time that leads us to procrastinate, waste, and trade what matters for what is trivial. Only when the awareness of finitude becomes clear, not as a fear, but as an inescapable truth, do we truly awaken. Then, each day is no longer a meaningless repetition, but a precious space where every choice carries deep weight. Awareness of death does not make life gloomy and dark. On the contrary, it makes everything sharper and more vibrant. The things that once troubled you, other people's opinions, pointless arguments, empty ambitions, begin to lose their weight. Instead, you turn toward what truly matters: genuine relationships, meaningful experiences, and the feeling of living true to yourself. Death, when rightly understood, is not the enemy of life, but the boundary that highlights its fragile beauty. Living as if each day were the last does not mean rushing or letting go recklessly, but living with full presence. You listen more deeply, feel more clearly, and act with greater intention. Every moment becomes a conscious choice instead of an unconscious reflex. You no longer kill time because you understand that time is your very life. When you truly absorb that time is finite, you stop living in procrastination. You begin to say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, and release what is no longer worth keeping. And in that awakening, you do not merely live longer in perception, you live more deeply. Because in the end, a meaningful life is not measured by the number of years, but by the depth of presence in each moment lived. To me, life seems too short to spend time nurturing hatred or remembering injustices. To Charlotte Bronte, what is worth keeping in one's life, not because you have never been hurt, but precisely because you have been through enough to understand that carrying hatred is an unnecessary burden on a journey that is already short. Life, when looked at long enough and deeply enough, is not a place to accumulate scars, but a place to learn how to set them down gently. Nurturing hatred is like continually watering a poisonous tree in the garden of your own heart. It does not merely exist, it grows, spreads, and gradually takes over the space meant for more positive feelings. You may think you are holding on to justice, but in reality, you are tying yourself to past memories so they can continue to rule the present. Life is too short for that. You are stepping into a state of deeper freedom. You no longer try to remember every injustice like a ledger of debts. No longer let other people's actions shape your mood. This does not mean you forget or passively accept everything, but that you understand not every experience deserves to be kept long-term in your mind. There is a very real relief when you stop carrying what no longer serves your peace. Like a traveler leaving behind unnecessary belongings to travel lighter, you begin to experience life with greater openness and spaciousness. And then you realize what is precious is not how many hurtful things you can remember, but how much space you still keep in your heart to love, to live, and to feel. When time is finite, every emotion you keep is a choice, and the choice to let go is not weakness. It is a form of profound wisdom.